Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Today is day 3 and it is our endeavor to complete in 8 lectures all the important chapters of this beautifully written book, Indian Constitution at Work, which is a textbook in political science for class 11th. We have covered 2 chapters, chapter number 1, chapter number 2, and today let's discuss chapter number 3, where we will discuss election and representation. So let's get started and answer 2 important questions. Can we have a democracy without holding elections? Question number 1. Question number 2, can we hold elections without having democracy? Now, what is democracy? Democracy basically means rule by the people. Clear? But what is the population of India? More than 140 crore. Is it possible for the entire population to come together to enact laws, to make policies? No. So there was a time in ancient Greece where all the people would come together and take decisions. That's something that we called direct democracy. Is there a closely similar example of direct democracy in India? Perhaps yes. Where? At the 3rd tier of the government. Because our system is a 3-tier government system. We have a government at the center called the union government. We have government in every state, the state governments. And then we have governments at the local level, Panchayati Raj institutions in rural areas and urban local bodies in urban areas, the municipalities, for example. And the embodiment of direct democracy can be seen in a Gram Sabha. Now, what is a Gram Sabha? All those who are in a village and are above the age of 18, they are part of the Gram Sabha. That means all the registered voters in a village, they are part of the Gram Sabha and they take decisions for the entire village. So closely, what used to happen in ancient Greece, direct democracy, where all the people would come together to take decisions, to make policies, that is something which is happening at the Gram Sabha as well. But only at a village level. Can we replicate this formula for the entire country, which has more than 140 crore population? That is why democracy in India means rule by the people, but not directly, through their representatives. And that is what we call indirect democracy. But how do we choose these representatives? For that, there is a process called elections. So what are elections? Elections are the method by which people elect their representatives. That's what election is. But the point is, question number 1, can we have democracy without holding elections? If democracy means rule by the people by electing their representatives, without elections, how can we elect representatives? So holding elections are a must in a democracy. So can we have democracy without holding elections? Perhaps no. But this election has to be free and fair. And what do we mean by free and fair election? I'll come to that slightly later. But let's address question number 2. Can we hold elections even without having democracy? There are countries in the world, and you tell me in the comment section which are these countries, where there is a dictator, there is a one-party rule. But to appear democratic, this dictator organizes elections. But even before the elections, we know what is going to be the outcome of these elections, because these elections are not free and fair. And these countries are not democratic. So elections are held in such dictatorship regimes so that the dictator appears to be democratic, but the country is not democratic. So question number 1, can we have democracy without holding elections? Perhaps no. And can we hold elections without having democracy? Yes. But as I said, election has to be free and fair. And how do we organize free and fair election? This is where the Constitution comes. Because Constitution has to mention who is eligible to vote, who is eligible to contest elections, who is there to supervise elections, who is going to organize these elections, how do voters choose their representatives, how are the votes to be counted, and how are these representatives going to be elected. So what are you saying? I'm saying the first two questions tell us about free elections. What are free elections? Everybody who is eligible to vote should be allowed to vote. Everybody who is eligible to contest elections should be allowed to contest elections. So election has to be free. Anybody who wants to vote and is eligible, anybody who wants to contest elections and is eligible should be allowed to exercise these rights. And if that happens in a country, we say that country is holding free elections. But what are fair elections? What if I'm allowed to vote and I voted for a party A, but the way these votes were counted, my vote was registered in favor of party B, which means although the election was free, but it was not fair. Any system that we use has to be accurate. Accurate in the sense, if I am wanting to vote for a candidate A, my vote should be registered for this candidate A. If it is registered in favor of candidate B, C, D or anyone else, then it is not a fair election. Or I voted for candidate A, it got registered for candidate A as well, but when the results were announced, candidate B was declared winner despite the fact that he had lost. He had got the less number of votes, which means election was free, but it was not fair. What if the authorities who are responsible for ensuring free elections, they don't allow some people to vote, which means the authorities are making this election process unfair. Election should not only be conducted for namesake, elections have to be free and fair. And the presence of a free and fair election or the absence of a free and fair election will tell us whether a country is really democratic or not. That's something very important that you need to understand. But how do people vote? What is the method of election? How are people able to elect their representatives? There can be different methods, and we will discuss such different methods today. But the first important method is first past the post system. NCERT is asking you, look at the newspaper clipping. And I'll try and wear my Hindi glasses and try and read this clipping. पहली बार कांग्रेस को 3/4 बहुमत. For the first time, Congress gets 3/4 majority. In 2024 Lok Sabha elections, the slogan of the BJP was, this time we will cross 400. Ab ki baar 400 par. Did not happen. But has it happened at any point in time in our independent history? It has. When? The year was 1984. After the assassination of Srimati Indira Gandhi, then Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister, and then the elections were conducted. And if there are 543 Lok Sabha seats, 415 were backed by the Congress party, which means the Congress party got the biggest ever mandate in the history of independent India. 4/5 of the seats were backed by the Congress party. But does that mean if 4/5 of the seats were backed by the Congress party, does that mean 4 out of every 5 voters voted for the Congress? No. In fact, Congress got only 48% of the votes, which means of all the people who voted, 48% voted for the Congress party. Yet Congress party got 4/5 of the seats, 415 out of 543. Why? Because we follow first past the post system. And what is this first past the post system? The entire country is divided into 543 constituencies. Every constituency will elect one representative. But how many votes should this candidate get in order to be your representative? He should get the maximum number of votes. So that we know, that is too simple. Now let me confuse you. What is the difference between maximum number of votes and the majority of votes? If I tell you I'll take a poll, and in this poll I will ask you, should I end this class right now so that we can resume this class tomorrow? And those who say yes. Those who want the class to continue say no. Clear? And I will go by the majority. Whatever majority decides, I will abide by that. But what is majority in this case? More than half. If out of 113 students are watching me live right now, if more than 56 or 57 students, they say, let's end the class, I will end the class. If less than that, I will continue with the class. So when I say the decision will be taken by the majority, it means the decision will be taken by vote of more than half of the voters. But in first past the post system, we don't decide by the majority of the votes. We decide by the maximum number of votes, which means if in this particular constituency there are 1 lakh voters and there are 5 candidates A, B, C, D, E who are contesting elections, what is the number of votes that a candidate should get in order to get elected from this constituency? You can't say it right now. Why? Because it can vary. Vary in the sense A gets 30,000 votes, B gets 20,000 votes, C gets, let's say, 19,000 votes, D gets, let's say, 11,000 votes, E gets the remaining number of votes. Who is the winner? Winner is A. Despite the fact that A did not get the majority. A did not get more than half of the votes, but A got the maximum number of votes. This is what we call first past the post system, which means hypothetically, if A belongs to a political party X, and if the candidate set up by this political party in all the 543 constituencies, all these candidates get 25% votes from every constituency. That means 543 candidates from every constituency, their candidate gets 25% of the votes, and that is the highest. All the other candidates, they get less than 25% of the votes, which means this political party X will get all the 543 seats, but despite that, the voting would only be 25%. The vote percentage in favor of this political party may only be 25%. That is what we call first past the post system. And this might happen in a democracy which follows multi-party system, where there are multiple political parties, multiple candidates who are going to contest elections. If it was a direct contest between 2 political parties, if it was a bi-party or a 2-party system, then at least one party will get more than half. But here, since it's a multi-party system where there are hundreds of political parties and independents contesting elections, it may be possible, hypothetically, it may be possible that a political party gets only 25% of the votes but captures all 543 seats in the Lok Sabha. This is what we call first past the post system. But what are we discussing? We are discussing the method by which the people can elect their representatives. So can we have democracy without elections? Perhaps no. Can we have elections without a democracy? Yes. But elections should not only be conducted for namesake. Election has to be free and fair. And what is election? The method by which the people choose their representatives. And this method is also important. And there are multiple methods. One method is first past the post system. Is it clear? Let's look at another method, the alternative to first past the post system. And that is what we call proportional representation. Something that we see in Israel. But proportional representation system also has many variants. We will discuss 3 variants today. Variant number 1, which is followed in Israel. And what is followed in Israel? In Israel, elections are conducted every 4 years. The country is not divided into constituencies. So people will vote for political party. And once people vote for political party, then we will look at the voting percentage. For a political party, how many people voted? And then assign seats to this political party based on the vote share. Israel has a parliament known as Knesset. Every 4 years, elections are conducted. And once elections are conducted, which means people come out in large numbers and vote not for the candidates, but for the political party. And then these are the political parties which contest elections. Of all the 100 people who voted in Israel in 2015 elections, 23.4 voted for the Likud party, which means in proportion to this vote share, those many seats were given to the Likud party. They got 30, the other political party got 24, 13, 11, so on and so forth. Which means in proportion to your vote share, those many seats shall be made available for that particular political party, which is what we call proportional representation system. But there is another variant of proportional representation system. That is something which is followed in Netherlands. What happens in Netherlands also happens in Argentina. What happens in Portugal, for example? What happens in Argentina, for example? There can be multi-member constituencies as well. Which means in India, there are 543 constituencies. And from every constituency, only one candidate will emerge as the winner. But in Argentina, in Portugal, for example, there can be multi-member constituencies as well. Which means from a particular constituency, you can elect more than one representative as well. And that is based on the vote share of a political party, because every political party in Argentina and Portugal prepares a list of the candidates, and then people will vote for the political party. Then according to the vote share, the political party will get those many seats in the parliament. This is another variant of proportional representation system. If I'll ask you a question, has something of this sort happened in India? Yes. In the first 2 Lok Sabha elections, for example, we had 2-member constituencies as well, where people elected 2 representatives from that constituency, one from the general category, one from the reserved category. In fact, there were a couple of constituencies where 3 candidates were elected. But this multi-member constituencies, it was abolished in 1961. Although it's not mentioned in NCERT, but that's an additional information that I'm sharing with you. So apart from first past the post system, we can have another method of election, which is proportional representation system. But now you will say, sir, this method seems better. In proportion to your vote share, those many seats will be available to you. But even at the peak of the sympathy wave for Rajiv Gandhi, because he got a lot of sympathy votes because his mother was assassinated, even at that time, the Congress could get only 48% of the votes. Even at the peak of the Modi wave in 2014 or 2019, the BJP would not cross 37% of the votes. 31% in 2014, 37% in 2019, which means if we would have followed proportional representation system, it would have resulted in coalition governments for the majority period of time. And coalition governments, which means multiple political parties coming together to form the government. For example, right now we are having a coalition government because the BJP does not have the majority on its own. So it is dependent upon the support from Mr. Nitish Kumar, from Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, from Chirag Paswan and others to form the government. Which means we assign instability with a coalition government. That's why we did not resort to first past the post system when it comes to Lok Sabha elections in India, when it comes to legislative assembly elections in India. Also, why did India not adopt the first past, why did India not adopt the first proportional representation system? And why did we go for first past the post system? I think you already know the answer, because of the simplicity of the first past the post system. The entire population, all those who are the voters, they know why are they entering the polling booth. They just have to press the button on the electronic voting machine, vote for the candidate and then go. There is no complexity involved. Because in first past the post system, I as a voter know for which candidate I am going to vote for. So that if this candidate does not do my work, does not solve my problems, does not address my grievances, I am not going to vote for this candidate again in the next election. So I am going to hold this representative accountable. So there is much better accountability when it comes to first past the post system. But in proportional representation system, I don't know the candidate. I am voting for the party. And then the party will choose the candidates based upon their strength. So I can't hold a specific representative accountable to me. But do we have proportional representation system somewhere in India? Yes, we have. Where? In the election of the president. Where? In the election of the vice president. Where? In the election of the members to the Rajya Sabha. How many seats does a particular state have in the Rajya Sabha? This is something which is mentioned in the Constitution. Where? Schedule 4 of the Constitution. Clear? Now, how are these MPs to Rajya Sabha elected? Proportional representation system. And then there is another variant of proportional representation system. What is that variant? Let's say, hypothetically, we have to elect 4 MPs to the state X, from the state X to Rajya Sabha. So there is a state X. From this state, we have to select 4 MPs to Rajya Sabha. But the state will have a legislative assembly, because every state has a legislative assembly. How many members are there in the legislative assembly divided by number of vacancies plus 1 plus 1. This is the number of votes that a candidate should get in order to get elected to Rajya Sabha from that state. Sir, what are you saying? I am saying we have to elect 4 MPs to Rajya Sabha from the state X. And let's suppose X has 300 MLAs. These 300 MLAs will vote, which means who votes to elect MPs to Rajya Sabha? MLAs. Now these 300 MLAs will vote to elect 4 MPs to Rajya Sabha. But how many votes should a particular candidate get in order to get elected to Rajya Sabha? That is determined by this formula. Which means if 300 is the number of voters, number of elected MLAs in the Legislative Assembly, plus we have 4 as the vacancy, plus 1, which means 300 divided by 5 plus 1, which means 61. I got confused with the calculation. Any candidate, in order to get elected to Rajya Sabha, should get 61 votes. But listen to me carefully. If this is 300, and let's suppose we have a political party, BJP, which has 200 MLAs here, and there is a political party, Congress, which has 70 MLAs, and there is Aam Aadmi Party, which has 30 MLAs. Can you tell me how many MPs in Rajya Sabha will be from BJP from the state X? 3. How many MPs in Rajya Sabha from the state X will be from the Congress? 1. How many MPs to Rajya Sabha from this state X will be from the Aam Aadmi Party? 0. Why? Because Aam Aadmi Party does not have the minimum number of votes required to get their candidate elected. So what is this? In proportion to your representation, those many seats you will get. What is this? This is proportional representation system. But there is, I told you, a complex variation of proportional representation system in India. And that is something that we call preference. And that is something we call single transferable vote. Single transferable vote in the sense, if for example, you are the voter, which means you are the MLA who have to vote to elect an MP to Rajya Sabha from your state, you are given a ballot slip. Here is the candidate and here is your preference. Preference in the sense, you are coming to my cafe. Give me one vanilla ice cream. I said, sir, vanilla ice cream is not available. Do you have any other preference? Okay, give me butterscotch. Sir, that's also not available. I'm sorry. Do you have any other preference? Okay, give me a chocolate. Similarly, when you vote for the Rajya Sabha elections, you are given preference. Preference in the sense, if there are 3 candidates contesting election, hypothetically, you may not only vote for one candidate, you will vote for all the 3. How? You will say, my first preference is B, my second preference is A, my third preference is C. And now votes will be counted. So first preference votes will be counted. Which means, if nobody is getting 61, which is the number required to get elected, in this case, let's assume candidate A gets 50, candidate B gets 40, candidate C gets 20, for example. What is the minimum number of votes required? 61. Does that mean we will have no representative from the state to Rajya Sabha? No. Then what will happen? This candidate C, who gets the least number of votes, is eradicated from the contest. Which means 20 students here who had voted for C, now you will have no representative. But you may have given first preference to C, but what was your second preference? Maybe all these 20 people voted for A as their first preference, second preference. Which means now these 20 votes will be shifted to A. Now A will get 50 plus 20, which means 70, which is more than 61, which is required for you to get elected. So this is what we call proportional representation system by means of single transferable vote, because you have to give preferences and then because of that your vote can be transferred as well. Now you got the answer to this question, why India adopted first past the post system, because this system is so complicated that you can't teach this concept to millions of the voters in India. But MLAs who are part of the Legislative Assembly, who are going to vote to elect Rajya Sabha MPs, you can teach them, you can train them that this is how you will have to vote. You will have to give preferences. And there are smaller number of only thousands of MLAs in India. So you can train them properly, tell them, guide them how to give preference on your ballot paper. But you can't train and guide millions of voters, telling them this complicated process of who is going to be your first preference, second preference, third preference, so on and so forth. And that is why India resorted to first past the post system. Because this first past the post system gives a clear choice. A clear choice is presented to the voters at the time of the election. Voters have to simply endorse a candidate or a party while voting. This is what we call first past the post system, then proportional representation system. And we have a complex form of proportional representation system when we elect the president, the vice president, and a member of the parliament to the Rajya Sabha. Now the point is, members of the Constituent Assembly who drafted the constitution, they felt that this proportional representation based system, as I told you previously, may not be suitable for giving a stable government, because there may always be instability. There may always be coalition governments, because no political party would be in a position to get more than 50% of the votes. And that is why we resorted to first past the post system. But then there is something called reservation of constituencies. There are seats reserved for SCs and STs, where in Lok Sabha and in state legislative assemblies. There is no reservation for SCs and STs in Rajya Sabha. That's something that you have to keep in mind. But why reservation? In first past the post system, whoever gets the highest number of votes gets elected to the Lok Sabha, which means from this constituency, the majority caste will always elect their representative. Because whether you agree or not, like it or not, agree or disagree, we don't cast our vote in elections. We vote our caste. That's the reality of the elections. So if we follow first past the post system, then a dominant caste or a group will always get representation. But what happens to the marginalized communities? What happens to the tribals? What happens to the Dalits, who are from the weaker socially and educationally backward class of citizens? That is why we have reservation for them, because otherwise they would be unrepresented in the parliament. The year was 1909, when Morley-Minto reforms were implemented in India. They called it reforms, the British. But it introduced a concept called separate electorates, communal electorates. For example, there were some seats reserved for Muslims, which means only Muslims could contest elections, which means only Muslims could vote in these elections for those constituencies. And there is a general consensus now that that separate electorate system resulted in the unfortunate partition of this country along the lines of the religion in 1947. But the fact of the matter is, the reservation system in India was not like that separate electorate system. There will be seats reserved for SCs and STs, but anybody can vote. People from other caste groups can also vote in these elections, although only SCs and STs can contest from those seats. And this political reservation was originally provided only for 10 years. After 10 years, it would have ceased to exist. But since 1960 onwards, every time this political reservation for SCs and STs was to expire, Parliament would amend the Constitution, because that's something mentioned in the Constitution. So if you have to change something in the Constitution, for that you have to amend it. So Parliament amended the Constitution and extended this political reservation for SCs and STs. Another 10 years, another 10 years, another 10 years. And this reservation was to end in 2020. And in 2020, Parliament amended the Constitution again through 104th Constitutional Amendment Act and extended this political reservation for SCs and STs for 10 more years till 2030. We'll have to wait and watch in 2030 whether the Parliament would further extend this political reservation for SCs and STs. Of all the 543 constituencies, there are 84 which are reserved for the scheduled castes, and there are 47 which are reserved for the scheduled tribes. But who gets to decide how many seats and which are these seats which shall be reserved for SCs and STs? That is decided by an independent body called the Delimitation Commission. Clear? Something else. Check your progress. A group of 3 Muslims are corresponding with each other. What is the background? The population of Muslims in India is about 14.2%, according to NCERT. The number of Muslim MPs in Lok Sabha has been usually less than 6%. Of all the 543 MPs in Lok Sabha, less than 6% belong to the Muslim community, whereas their population is 14.2%, which means even less than half of their population, they have the number of seats in the Lok Sabha. One Muslim, Hilal, is saying that this first past the post system is unfair. We should have resorted to proportional representation system, which means if all Muslims would have voted for their own candidate, we would have seen 14% of the Lok Sabha MPs in the Lok Sabha from the Muslim community. Another guy, Arif, is saying this shows the wisdom of the Constituent Assembly. They reserved seats for SCs and STs. Otherwise, if there was no reservation for them, we won't see 84 SCs in the Lok Sabha or 47 STs in the Lok Sabha. So what Arif is saying, that we need reservation of seats for Muslims along the line of SCs and STs. Sabha is a woman. She says there is no point talking about Muslims as a whole, because even if Muslims will get reservation, Muslim women will not get representation. So we need it for Muslim women. This is the conversation that they are having. But now let's look at another very important aspect called universal franchise and right to contest. Whoever Constitution said is above we are going to give right to vote to every adult. Now, who is an adult will be determined by the Parliament. At the time when the first election was to be conducted, this right to vote was given to every adult above the age of 21. The year was 1989 when this voting age was reduced to 18 years, which means every adult who till 1989 was 21-year-old, and after that every adult who is 18 plus, you have the right to vote. Previously, right to vote used to be given to those who owned property, who had certain educational qualifications. Right to vote was not provided to anybody because the government, the makers of the law would feel, how can an illiterate vote? They don't know how to vote. They don't know for what basis you should vote. And in fact, a large number of countries would not provide voting rights even to women. United States, the so-called champion of democracy, they gave voting rights to women in 1920s. Britain gave voting rights to women in 1920s. Switzerland gave voting rights to women in 1970s. But India, in one fell swoop, in 1950, when the Constitution was enacted, gave right to vote to every adult. This is what we call universal adult suffrage. And this is something which is consistent with something that we discussed yesterday when we discussed rights in the Indian Constitution, the chapter, wherein we said that there should be a principle of equality. Everybody should be treated equally. Whether you own property or not doesn't matter. Whether you have the educational qualification or not doesn't matter. What is your gender doesn't matter. And we should not be discriminating against you as well on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, so on and so forth. So this universal adult franchise, where every adult is given right to vote, is consistent with the rights, with the policy of equality and non-discrimination, which is enshrined under Part 3 of the Constitution, Fundamental Rights chapter. And what is true for voting is also true for contesting elections. And this right to contest elections, this right to vote in the elections, is given to only the citizens of India. Only the citizens have the right to contest elections, to stand for the elections, to vote. But yes, there can be additional qualifications as well. If you want to contest Lok Sabha election, you should be 25 years old. If you want to contest Rajya Sabha election, you should be 30 years of age. And additionally, if you have been convicted, you cannot contest elections. Although only one disqualification is mentioned here, if you have been convicted by a court of law and you have been sentenced to 2 or more years in jail, you cannot contest elections. You are disqualified from contesting elections, but not forever, for 6 years after your release. So if you are sentenced to jail for a term of 2 years or more, let's say you are sentenced to 5 years in jail, for 5 years you cannot contest elections. But then once you are released, for 6 more years after your release, you cannot contest elections. Once that 6-year period is over, then you can contest election. This is to ensure that we decriminalize our polity. Because we are electing you to Lok Sabha. We are electing you to Rajya Sabha. There, what will you do? You will make laws. But previously, you have broken laws. That's why you were convicted by the court and sentenced to prison. So how can a lawbreaker remain a lawmaker? Clear? That is why you are disqualified. Some of you will say, sir, what about Amritpal Singh? He is in jail, but he contested election. Sir, what about Engineer Rashid, an MP from Baramulla in Jammu and Kashmir? He was in jail, now released on bail for campaigning. Then he will go back to jail. But then how did we people elect them? There is a difference between an accused and a convict. Both these people, both these men, Amritpal Singh, Engineer Rashid, they are accused of committing crimes. But they have not yet been convicted. They have not yet been declared guilty. And the moment they are declared guilty, they will be disqualified. And then the number of years that they will serve in jail, during that period, they cannot contest elections. And once they are released from the prison, then for 6 more years, they cannot contest elections. That is something that you should need to know. But the most important question then is, who will organize these elections? Should we entrust this power to the government, to the party which is in power? Then the election will be conducted in such a manner that it will favor my political party. It should favor my political party. I will organize the election in such a manner, on such dates, on such time, under such methods and rules that should favor my political party. That is why we should entrust this responsibility, which Constitution has done, entrust this responsibility of organizing free and fair elections to an independent body known as Election Commission of India. And Article 324 says of the Constitution, superintendence, direction, conduct, control of all elections, whether it is election to the President, election to the Vice President, election to the Lok Sabha, election to the Rajya Sabha, election to the Legislative Assembly, election to the Legislative Council, all this will be carried out under the supervision of the Election Commission of India. But Election Commission of India does not organize, conduct local body elections. Local body elections, elections to municipalities, elections to Panchayati Raj institutions. Such elections are conducted by a separate constitutional body called State Election Commission. Clear? This Election Commission of India till 1989 used to be a single member body. That means we have the Election Commission of India. It would consist only of Chief Election Commissioner, single member. He would organize elections. Then in 1989, 2 more election commissioners were appointed. But after the election was over, these 2 election commissioners were removed. So we got back to a single member Chief Election Commissioner. But then in 1991, then again in 1993, this Election Commission of India would consist of Chief Election Commissioner and not more than 4 election commissioners. So now the Election Commission of India would consist of Chief Election Commissioner and not more than 4 election commissioners. Not more than 4. Can it be less than 4? Yes. So normally now we have a Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissioners. And together they decide all and everything related to elections. And who appoints them? NCERT says President on the advice of the Council of Ministers. So if President on the advice of the Council of Ministers would appoint Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners, then how is this Election Commission of India an independent body? Because then these officers who are responsible for organizing free and fair elections, they are appointed by the ruling political party. They will be biased in favor of the ruling political party. Who says this? NCERT. Where it says this fear has led many to suggest that this procedure should be changed. Many persons have suggested that a different method should be followed. That makes consultation with leader of the opposition in Lok Sabha and Chief Justice of India necessary for the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners. And in fact, it did happen. How? A public interest litigation was filed. Anup Baranwal. Supreme Court was asked, my lord, this system, this procedure of appointments to Election Commission of India, it violates free and fair elections. There is so much executive interference. Supreme Court said, till the time Parliament changes a law, Parliament enacts a law, Election Commissioner and Chief Election Commissioner should be appointed by the President after consultation with the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition in the Lok Sabha and the Chief Justice of India. Which means the suggestion of the NCERT was accepted by the Supreme Court. But then Parliament enacted a law, and right now the condition is, the situation is, the status is that the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners are appointed by President, but after consulting a committee. Committee would consist of Prime Minister, Union Minister, who is nominated by the Prime Minister. So any Union Minister can be nominated by the Prime Minister, and then the Leader of the Opposition. So basically this suggestion of NCERT was tweaked by the Parliament, saying instead of Chief Justice of India, we will have the Union Minister nominated by the Prime Minister to be part of this committee to recommend names to the President as Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners. But don't you think that this system is also biased in favor of the ruling political party at the center, where the Prime Minister and a minister nominated by the Prime Minister will get to decide who is going to be the Chief Minister, who is going to be the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners? Then what difference does this committee mean as compared to the previous system, where on the advice of the Council of Ministers, you are appointing CEC and election commissioner? Because if out of these 3 people, 2 would say no, this person should be appointed as the CEC, President will have to accept. Now this law also has been challenged in the court. Now we will have to wait and watch what the Supreme Court judgment would be. Is this process fair, reasonable in appointing members and chairperson of an independent Election Commission of India? Clear? Let's look at something else. What is the role of the Election Commission of India? It supervises election, organizes elections, conducts elections, prepares the voter list. Just before the election, voter list is prepared so that new voters are added. Those voters who have died, they are removed from the voter list. That is job number one. Job number two, it determines the timing and the schedule of the elections. On what date, in how many phases elections will be conducted in India, that will be determined by Election Commission of India. Election Commission of India has all the power to organize free and fair election. Who appoints the district magistrate or the collector of a district? The government. But if this is an election process, if elections are going on, the Election Commission of India can transfer this collector to another department and appoint a different collector. If the Election Commission feels that this collector is doing the bidding of the ruling political party, is focusing or favoring the ruling political party. So every action can be taken by the Election Commission of India to ensure free and fair elections. And Election Commission of India also recognizes political parties. Some political parties are recognized as national political parties. For example, the BJP, the Congress, the CPIM, the Aam Aadmi Party, the National People's Party of Northeast. There are 6 political parties which are recognized as the national political party by the Election Commission of India. And there are tens and tens of state political parties. RJD, JDU, Shiv Sena, so on and so forth. All these are state political parties. So recognition as national or state political party is given by Election Commission of India. Symbols are allotted by the Election Commission of India. And if there is a dispute, for example, Shiv Sena got split, NCP got split, previously AIA-DMK got split, and both the camps were claiming that we are the real AIA-DMK, we are the real Shiv Sena, we are the real NCP. So we should get this symbol, we should get the 2-leaf symbol of AIA-DMK. We should get the clock symbol, we should get this arrow symbol. And in case there is a dispute on the symbol, that also is resolved by the Election Commission of India. But towards the end, we also need to look at some of the electoral reforms. Some reforms have been mentioned, not all. It's not a holistic set of electoral reforms mentioned in the NCERT, but we will focus on it. Our system of elections, reform number 1, where we have first past the post system, NCERT says it should be modified to have some variant of proportional representation system. Maybe we can have a mix. Some constituencies should be first past the post system based, and there should be some seats which should be given to political parties based on their performance in the elections, based on proportional representation system. So some mix, some variant of proportional representation system we should implement. Second, there should be a special provision to ensure that at least 1/3 of women are elected to parliament and assemblies. And this is something for which we have already amended the Constitution. 106th Constitutional Amendment Act, which provides that as nearly as 1/3 of the seats in the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies shall be reserved for women. But this constitutional amendment has not been implemented yet. This women's reservation has not been implemented yet. Why? Because for that we need to have delimitation. Because I told you, if there are seats reserved for SCs, seats reserved for STs, who will reserve these seats? Delimitation Commission. But for that, Delimitation Commission should know what is the current exact population number, population count, population figure. And how do we know For that, we conduct census exercise every 10 years. This census exercise was to be carried out in 2021, but could not be carried out because of, the government says, COVID-19 pandemic. So to implement this women's reservation, we first need census, because that will tell us the population. Then there will be delimitation, which will reorganize the constituencies in India and reserve seats for women, and then women's reservation would be implemented. And that is what this 106th Amendment also says. There will be women's reservation, but slightly delayed. Because first we will have census and then delimitation. Which means, if census is conducted today, let's say in 2024, then there will be delimitation. Delimitation Commission may be set up in 2025, but it won't give an award in a day or 2 days or a year, because last time Delimitation Commission was set up was in 2002. And do you know how many years it took them to give an award? Award in the sense, how many seats are to be reserved, where? 6 years. So if Delimitation Commission is to be set up in 2026, it might take 5 years, 4 years, which means till 2030, which means even in 2029, we won't see, unfortunately, the implementation of the women's reservation system. Third reform, stricter provisions to control the role of money in electoral politics. Do you know, and you'll be surprised to know, if you don't know this already, that Indian election is considered to be more expensive than the US presidential election. More than 35,000 crore is spent in an election. But this is not spent by the government. This is not spent from yours and my taxpayers' money. This is spent by political parties. And where do political parties get this money from? Corporates. Don't you think there is a quid pro quo? Why should a political party donate money to a... Why should a corporate donate money to a political party? A company donate money to a political party? So that if this political party comes to power tomorrow, it will make favorable policies for my company, for my industry. So there is always a quid pro quo. Then how is this election fair? Because we thought we are voting to elect our representatives. But in reality, whoever has more money gets to form the government. Which means in reality means the big corporate houses will determine who forms the government. They will give you more money and you will win the election. And that is why NCERT recommends that election expenses should be paid by the government, so that political parties are not allowed to raise money from corporates, from companies, from other donors. Government will give a money from a special fund. So there should be a separate fund created for elections. And from this fund, money should be given to political parties to contest elections, so that they are not able to, they are not allowed to raise money, get donations from corporate houses. And it's a big matter. Whether it will be accepted or not, that we have to see. And this is what we call state funding of elections. Then another reform, candidates with any criminal case should be barred from contesting elections, even if their appeal is pending before a court. Now, this might give you a misleading sense that any candidate with a criminal case, tomorrow there can be a criminal case against you. In a sense, both of us are contesting elections from this constituency. Clear? I see you are a credible face. People might vote for you, not for me, because you have a better educational qualification, you have a better track record, maybe you come from a better caste, to which majority of the people in this constituency come from, because people vote their caste, they don't cast their vote. What I will do, I will file a criminal case against you, that you are a murderer, that you are a rapist, that you are a terrorist. And just because of that case, you are not allowed to contest elections. Is that what NCERT means? That candidates with any criminal case should be barred from contesting elections? No. What NCERT really means is that those people who have been convicted for criminal cases, now they are filing an appeal before the higher court. High court should not suspend their conviction, which means they should not be allowed to contest elections. That means those who have been convicted, they should not be allowed to contest elections. But sir, you said whoever is convicted is not allowed to contest elections. But sometimes what happens, even if you are convicted by a district court, you approach the high court and high court suspends your conviction, saying we will hear this matter again. Until that time, your conviction is set aside. When your conviction is set aside, that means you are not a criminal, which means you can contest elections. That's what NCERT mentions. There should be complete ban on the use of caste and religion or religious appeals in the campaign. NCERT reform. But you can't say, sir, I won't write it in the exam if this question is asked, because this reform would not be implemented. But you have to write something to get 12.5 marks in the exam. There should be a law to regulate the functioning of political parties to ensure that they function in a transparent and democratic manner. Regulate political parties in the sense, how do they elect their presidents? Is it only from the family? Is it only the two people deciding? That should be determined by a law so that every political party will function in a democratic manner. And why this is important, listen to me carefully. Are we a democracy? Yes. How do we say that we are a democracy? Because elections are conducted periodically. So periodic election is an important ingredient of democracy. Periodic election is, it should be conducted after every period, let's say 5 years. Can we say there is a country X which is a democracy because last time they held election was in 1900? So since they hold elections but after every century, does that mean that country is democratic? No. Elections should be free and fair. It should also be conducted periodically, and that period should not be more than 5 years, ideally. So India is a democracy because elections are conducted periodically, every 5 years. And elections are free and fair as well. But who contests these elections? Political parties. Now, do you know what the problem is? The problem is that our constitution talks a lot about who gets to vote, who gets to contest. Our constitution talks a lot about what should be your qualification, what should be your disqualification. But constitution is silent on the political parties which set up candidates to contest elections. So we have requirements for candidates, but not for political parties. That is the need of the hour. But if you are preparing for civil services examination and you think that this chapter would cover holistic syllabus for the exam, you are mistaken. Because for the civil services exam, you should cover in detail what is the role of the Election Commission of India. How election commissioners are appointed, how are they removed, what is their conditions of service, how do we reform election commission as well. Then you have to discuss the entire election cycle. When dates are announced, when notification is issued, what is the campaign that takes place, what is Representation of the People Act 1951, what is Representation of the People Act 1950 in great detail, what is Model Code of Conduct, what are electronic voting machines, are they good, bad or the ugly, what is compulsory voting, because when voting takes place, people in urban areas, they don't come out in large numbers to vote. So the voting percentage is a cause for concern. That is what some commentators argue, that the reason why BJP did not do as well as they expected themselves to do was because of the low voting percentage. And how can we increase the voting percentage? Should we make it compulsory to vote in the elections? If the government can force you to wear seat belt when you're driving a car, if the government can force you to wear helmet when you're riding a motorcycle, when the government can force you to pay tax, the government can also force you to vote in the elections, because government can do anything for the legitimate public interest. And forcing you to vote may be a legitimate public interest, but whether you should be forced to vote or not, what are the arguments in favor, what are the arguments against, what is an opinion poll, what is a post poll, what is an exit poll, should there be regulation of opinion polls, do opinion polls influence the minds of the voters, what are the reforms that we require in election system, should there be one nation, one election? How can we end the criminalization of politics? What is the controversy surrounding electoral bonds? How money should be donated to political parties? Should candidates be allowed to contest from two constituencies? Mr. Rahul Gandhi contested from Amethi and Wayanad. He had to resign from Wayanad because you can't be representative of two constituencies at the same time. Isn't this violating the trust of the voter of the Wayanad who may have voted for you? Isn't it torture for those voters who are now being asked to vote again to elect their another representative within 6 months of the election? How much can a candidate spend in the elections? All that is mentioned in the laws, Representation of the People Act, and you have to discuss that in great detail. Then your elections chapter would be over for civil services exam. And let's not forget, what is a political party? What are the national and state political parties? You don't have to know their names, but what is the advantage that a political party gets if it is declared as a national political party or a state political party? What is the difference between a recognized political party and a registered political party and an unregistered, unrecognized political party? All these things we have to discuss. What is an election trust? And that would holistically cover your elections chapter. Now over to your comments. If you have any doubts, let me know. I'll be happy to help. If an individual commits crime, she can't contest elections. On the other hand, you mentioned that they can contest elections. If I have committed a crime but I'm still an accused, I'm accused of that crime, I can contest election. If I'm declared guilty that yes, you have committed this crime, you have been convicted, then you can't contest election. And in case you forgot to like this video, you can do it now. How one nation, one election will be implemented? Cabinet nod means Cabinet has accepted this report of Ramnath Kovind committee which recommended one nation, one election. Now a bill has to be passed by the parliament. Lots of amendments will have to take place. You have to amend the constitution, you have to amend Representation of the People Act, you have to make changes to the rules of business and procedure, which I don't think would happen because a constitutional amendment requires special majority, which the government does not enjoy in the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. So that looks difficult. Let's see what will happen. The link to join my Telegram I will mention after this session as the pinned comment. You can join. So Rahul Gandhi contested. Yes, thanks for correcting me. Wayanad and Raebareli. Any tips for tomorrow's essay? All the best. That's tip number 1. Don't be scared. Tip number 2. I know you will do well. That's the reassurance. Okay, and if you need the PDF of this lecture, that will also be available on my Telegram channel, which I will share in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Goodbye. All the best.